about portals, specifically what React and Vue. But before we jump into the details of what portals are, I'm just going to give you a high-level overview of what React is and what Vue is and what that means. So I'm sure you've all heard of portals, so this will all make a lot more sense when we talk about portals in terms of Vue and React, but the concept's the same. There's a whole video game based off portals. There's Narnia. It's like basically goes to a different world. That's like a portal. You have your classic Rick and Morty portal. And wormholes are like portals too, except they're interesting because there's a theoretical basis to that, so they're cool to think about. But that's portals. I'm sure you've all heard of it, so once we get into it, it should be a little more straightforward. Now I'm going to talk about React and Vue. So who here has used React and Vue before and sort of understand what it's about? So about half the people. So if you've already used it, this part might be a little bit basic for you, but for everyone else, hopefully it's a good overview. So React and Vue are both component-based libraries. So everything in there is organized into a component. And a component is a reusable, modular sort of block of code. And I do this diagram here to sort of represent what that's like. So components can be composed. You can have a parent component. A parent component can contain child components. And components have a well-defined API. And this is true for both React and Vue. They're very similar in this sense. They're both component-based libraries. As opposed to something like jQuery, or you might build your own sort of framework around the basic building blocks. React and Vue give you components as the basic building blocks. So basic interface between components are props and events. Data always flows in one direction when you're dealing with components. Props go in, so when you set an attribute on a component, it appears to the component as a prop or property, and components fire events up. So there's always this one-way communication, props down and events up. And this is just sort of sketch to show you what that's like. Does that make sense? Cool. Next slide. So I got carried away with my iPad and my Apple Pencil. I thought I might put it to use, so I drew some sketches to sort of drive home some points. So these are just two components, and it sort of visualizes how they might communicate with each other. So you pass around props and you emit events, and if there's a component that will change an event, it can respond to it. So that's the sort of dynamic that occurs between components in React and Vue. And that's the basics of React and Vue. It's components, and if you understand that, it's pretty easy to get started with the rest of it. And I'm going to go into more of the differences between React and Vue. They're mostly the same, but there are a few differences. And with this picture, I'm just trying to show a component. Everything is contained within the component, so you don't really follow sort of the MVC pattern. You have a component that has some internal state, some props, and it renders some HTML. And that's the same, again, in React and Vue. So the view is a function of props and state. So when state changes, and state is the internal sort of data that the component I guess relies on and uses, and props come from the outside, like I said before. And so these two things make up a component, or what a component renders. Excuse me. So this here is an example of a component in React. And there's two ways to build components in React and Vue, in React. You can have a class, you can use an ES6 class like this, or you can use a function. I'm just going to stick with the classical class example. And there's two major ways that Vue and React differ, and I think that's in terms of how they handle the data inside the component. So here you have some state, this is the internal state I was talking about. This is your entire component. So in React, state is immutable. So who here is familiar with the term immutable data? Got some hands, so about like 1/4. But basically immutable means you can't change it. So when you set some state on a component, like this count, and you set it to 1, you're never going to call state.count equals, or state.count plus 1, because that'll directly change what this state is. So in React, state is immutable and you never change it, but use a special function called setState to update the internal component state. And I'll tell you later how this differs in Vue. In Vue, data isn't immutable. You interact with it like you would any other regular JavaScript object. And so that's one reason why some people might like Vue. It's a little simpler to grasp in that sense. You don't have to deal with this immutability. That might be hard to understand at first. But yeah, that's one difference how components handle state. And it almost kind of makes more sense and ties into the sort of sketches that I showed before. You have your class component. This is your internal state, and it renders something. And this is going to be very similar to how it does it in Vue as well. You have some input, and you can see that what gets rendered this count here. The Vue output is a function of the state. And if we had some props in here, we can throw those in here as well. And basically, a new view would be rendered when the state of the props changes. And any questions about what's going on here? Cool. Oh, is there a question? Vue and React differ in another major way as well. So the first one I said was how they handle data. React has this idea of immutability and using set state to change data, whereas Vue just treats data as more like a plain object that you can just mutate and modify. And the other big thing I find is sort of the community tooling around these two libraries. In React, you have a big focus on using JSX. You can use React without JSX, but documentation and the community sort of gravitate around this syntax. And so if you start off with Vue and you go to React, or you start off with React and you go to Vue, then you might, and you really like JSX, then that's one of the things you might use to decide if you want to keep doing Vue or stick with React. So JSX is one of those big things that people sort of split on when it comes to the two frameworks. And if I go back one slide, you can see the rendered output here is JSX. And so JSX is just...
Sorry, I missed that. Can you go back?
Yep. You have a question about this?
No?
Okay, if anyone has any questions, feel free to shout out. So JSX is just syntactic sugar basically around functions. It lets you write this, and what it creates is this. And when someone says that you can use React without JSX, it's just writing the functions directly. But this is definitely a lot nicer than writing this. But if you write a component like this, and your view looks like this, then it goes through the build step. All the DOM nodes, all these things will be converted into this basically. And here's the exact same component, but in Vue. And you can see there's a lot of parallels. So instead of the render function, you have this template, and you can also put a template string. But this is the template in Vue is basically like the render function in React. You can define your component, and then you have some JavaScript here that lets you set the component state, internal data, and some other things like methods and anything else you want accessible in your component. And you can see here that in Vue, the state is just the data function that returns a plain object, and there's no concept of immutability here unless you want to add in immutability. But in Vue, you deal with the state like it's a regular object. So you don't need to call set state to update the state. You can just call count plus plus or count plus equals 1, and that'll be reflected in the Vue. So when the data changes, the Vue gets updated. Like in React and Vue, the Vue and React, the generated output is a function of the state and props. So if I go back twice, you can see just another comparison of how it looks. So this is Vue, and this is the same thing. Oh, sorry, I keep mixing up Vue and React. This is React, and this is the same thing in Vue. And in Vue, this basically just gets turned into a render function. But this is not JSX, it's HTML. But when Vue goes through this, it'll create a render function and handle things like this. So in Vue, you have the template directives and the special syntax like this. And it's all about HTML, but it's a way to let you add more functionality to the Vue template. And you can see Vue uses double
What's the link between template and script here?
Template and script. So this is what's referred to as a view, like single file component. So it's just a way to help organize it. So in a regular HTML document, you have your script tags at the bottom where you put your JavaScript. And this is sort of mimicking that structure and keeping your JavaScript separate from your view. So it's just an organizational thing. You put template in here, and this is a valid HTML, and then any script to control the internal state or any actions you want to perform as part of this component, you can put in your script. So this contains JavaScript, this contains HTML. And in Vue, in React, this is all just in a regular JavaScript file. So this is all just a JavaScript class, and when you return is an HTML, like in Vue, this is also just JavaScript. So in React, you're always working with JavaScript. So even if you see this, it's going to be transpiled to regular JavaScript. Whereas in Vue, this actually all gets split up, and this code will be in a file called like app.vue. It won't be a JavaScript. It's not just JavaScript or just HTML. You can see it's all separated there.
So actually that script, what is doing? It is invoking the template somewhere?
So it doesn't. You don't invoke the template directly. What you do is, and you'll see an example of this once I get the example of portals. But that's sort of the cool part about these frameworks is you build up these components and then you pass in your single entry point, and then React or Vue will go through and take these and compile them for you and generate your complete app at the end. So you don't have to manually call render or manually do any compilation here. This will be handled for you by Vue.
So that data is, can you pass some parameters there?
So you can pass parameters to the component through props, but this is, you define this in the component once and you can modify it later. Is that, I'm not sure I answered your question properly, is that what you mean?
Yeah, because for me it looks like it's some boilerplate there. Yeah, export default, so that means any script should have that, and then if you want to add more, how you customize it, yeah?
Oh, so yeah, every Vue component will look like this. You'll always export a default, which will be an object that represents the different options you can pass to a Vue component. And if you want to customize it, you can add different properties. So right now it's only defining the data, which is what you can access in the component. But you can add methods here to perform any custom actions, and you can look into the different sort of lifecycle parts of the component. So when Vue creates this app, it'll go through different phases of initializing the variables and stuff, and then actually mounting it. So you can look into those to get some more custom functionality out of it if you want to make an API call, say right after this component mounts. But that'll all be defined inside this sort of options object that Vue will take and then allow you to add a tracker view to this component here. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Kind of? Okay. Well, you can always shout out more questions, and if something doesn't make sense to anyone else too, I'll try my best to explain it. And we can always circle back and discuss anything that wasn't clear after.
So I'm just starting with Vue, and
Yep.
that seems to be the default starting point
Yeah.
for Vue.
Yeah. You usually have a single component, and then if you want to, generally the React and Vue have like one entry point, and if you want to build a bigger app, you have other custom components in here. So right now I'm just using plain HTML elements, but this button could be like my custom button, or it could be like a page where you have instead of like a div in each one, it'd be like component 1, component 2, component 3, and those components would be like this, but defined in a different file.
So each component you put it in the template. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have one entry point, and then all your components will go into this. Basically, it's a composition of components, and it's kind of hard to like reason about that from this small example. But near the end, I'm gonna pull up a couple examples of using portals in both these libraries, and it'll make a little more sense hopefully. But this is just like a high-level overview of how it kind of works. And yeah, that's actually really the main differences between React and Vue is React uses immutable data, and Vue works around just regular objects and sort of the communities around them. In Vue, you use templates and regular HTML. In React, you use JSX. And there's a few minor things. If you start using Vue or start using React, even though they're very similar, there's minor things that will be different as you work through them. Like in React, it's common to at least pass down props. So if you listen to the button click, in Vue it's really common to listen to the on-click event, and then do some and handle the event up here. In React, it's common just to pass down the event handler and call that directly when you put the button in the component.
So any reason why Vue doesn't use immutable data?
I guess it's just the architecture they went with. It seems a little more simpler. That's one of the I guess selling points for Vue. It makes it easier to reason about your data when you don't have to think about immutability. In React, you have to call set state. In Vue, you just treat it like a regular object, and a lot of people are familiar with that. So if you want to change, the value of count here, you can just call count plus plus, and it works how you would expect it. Whereas in React, you have to call this, which looks a lot more scary. You have to call set state, which takes the current state, and then you return a new state. So you're never modifying the current state, you're just replacing it with a new state. And that's what makes it immutable. You gotta take the old state, add one to it, and that'll be your new state. And it takes a little bit to wrap your head around, whereas in Vue it's a little bit easier to jump in because you're working with this, and it's a little easier to reason, but you just call count plus plus, and increment the count, and then updated count will be rendered here.
But immutability has advantages, yeah? I mean, it's not for, it has some advantages in code safety and stuff, yeah, because if you cannot change a variable and have to call a function on it, you know what they are doing. So it is easy to make mistakes in Vue, in my opinion. So what's their selling point there?
It is, you can use immutability in React if you want, or in Vue. But I guess, yeah, there's trade-offs. You can't, it's harder to build your app and structure it in a more functional, I guess, way. And yeah, it's just, the only selling point of it is it's easier to reason about. You don't have to deal with set state and in the edge cases it might introduce. But yeah, I agree. Using immutable state makes certain things a lot easier, especially when you need to do certain computations where you compare the various states, or where you need to revert the current state to the previous state. It makes it easier to, I guess, also travel through your state in your app.
But you can also do immutable state view.
Yeah.
With UX.
Yeah, you can.
Implement the Redux pattern.
Yeah, you can set up UX. So you can set up UX to use immutable state as well. And then instead of directly mutating the state, you just create a copy and then set that as the value.
And when you're working with larger code base,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to go through the view, in my experience, as compared to React.
Yeah. It's easier. You're saying it's easier in Vue to go through the code?
It's easier in Vue to go through component because everything related to component is in one file.
Yeah.
So for example, like data props or whatever, and you see all of that in one place.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can have similar steps in both React and Vue. In React, you can have everything in one place, and you can use it immediately in React and Vue. So it's just, it all comes down to the minor details, I think. Yeah, those are good points. And if you start working with React and Vue, you'll find it's very similar. You can do whatever you can do in React, you can basically do in Vue. Whatever you can do in Vue, you can pretty much do in React as well. And then, are there any more questions about these slides or concepts?
So both React and Vue are like rendering engines, yeah? Because I was reading people are preferring Vue lately to React. So it is just the fact that you don't have immutability and it's easy to apprehend the code, or?
There's a lot of reasons why people might think of Vue as opposed to React. But yeah, they both have their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, if you're working with a group of developers and you have to choose between the two, I would just choose whichever one people have the most experience with or are most familiar with, because you can do the same things in both. And in terms of immutability, like this gentleman said, you can set up immutable data structures in Vue as well. You don't need to follow just what they have set up with their data property there. You can bring in immutability and build it in a way similar to how React handles state if you need the advantage of immutability and want to write things in a more functional way. Yeah.
When you see like comparing Vue to React, do you mean like compare Vue to component? Kind of like of use.
Vue.
And you said like the Vue compared to the React something?
Oh, okay. So when I say you're talking about like, so there's Vue.js and then React.js, and are you saying like the rendered Vue versus like React, or are you saying how like? Are you asking about how the
You mentioned
two render?
Vuex, so I think he's asking about
okay.
Vuex.
Vuex is a way to sort of handle this data externally from the component. It's not something I'm going to go over in this presentation, but it's a way to allow you to easily share data between components. So like generally you have your data living in here, and if you want this component to have it, you pass it down as a prop. But if you want, say these components are nested more deeply in the component tree, and you want to pass in data from up here and share with all your child components, then that's a case where if you're using Vue, you might bring in a library called Vuex, and if you're using React, you'd bring in something like Redux. And these are just global state management libraries that you can use to pull up this sort of state away from outside a component into like a global component that you can share with all the other components. So it's just a different way to manage state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, you guys ready to move on to a little bit of portals? Let's do that. So, yeah. This is basically a portal in programming. You will define it as a component in one place, and then you can basically put whatever you want inside the portal. Here I have a header element h1. This component will be defined in some component in your app, and then you can set the other end of the portal anywhere else in the app. And then whatever you pass in the portal here will appear where you set the portal target. And that's basically it. That's basically how portals work. Here's another sketch of how this might be set up in your application. You have your HTML, and then you define a portal target in one place, and then you set up you have your component here. As you can see, they're totally different spots on the page. They're not nested inside each other, and so you can set up your portal in here, and whatever you render here will appear up here. So it's useful for things like modals. If you have a component where you want some sort of prompt to show up, and you want to cover everything on the page, but it's difficult because maybe this component has like an overflow or some weird positioning in the index that makes it hard to have the modal always appear above everything else. The modal is super useful. You can just define, that portal is super useful. You can define the portal here, and then it will render up here above everything else. And next slide will just be basically a list of like what modals are useful for. Like portals are useful for. Modals, pop-ups, dialogues, and tooltips. So basically anything you want to sort of break out from the component and render wherever you want, but still be part of the component. So you can create a modal that's its own separate component above everything else, but it won't be linked to any component. So a portal allows you to do that. It allows you to keep things defined in this component structure, which is what React and Vue are really good at, building apps from components, and it allows you to create things like modals, which require you to like sort of break out from that component structure and render something above all the other components. And so these are all my slides, and I have a couple examples of using portals in both React and Vue. Let me just make this a little bigger. Oh, super tiny. Okay, so testing things, portals. Okay. Here we go. We'll make this bigger. So what do we have here? Alright, so I have two examples here. One is in React and one is in Vue. So we'll just get the React one first. And I'm not doing any live coding right now. I created both of these apps before. I created the React app using Create React app, and the Vue component, or the Vue app, I created the Vue app using Vue CLI. So these are two pretty useful tools to get an app up and running pretty quick. And you can see, I'm not sure who asked this before, but you can see like this is the entry point for like a React component. It's going to be similar in Vue as well. You basically have one entry point. React DOM handles the rendering of the various components. So it'll take your JavaScript functions and create and generate HTML from those. And you basically select where you want your component to render, and then you pass in your app, and then it'll all get rendered. So you can see here we have this ID of root. This is where our app is going to go. And this is our index.html. You can see we're setting the target here for our app to the root, the element with the ID of root. And we're passing an app. And yeah, here's our app. So I'm just going to run this just so you guys can see what it's doing. Sorry. Okay, so this is the example I set up, and you'll see how this works, but in the code, I set up a component here with a portal, and I put some put a div in here, and it ends up being rendered at the top there. Something else. So here's my app. This is my portal target, and I just kept the original name that was set up for me here called Hello World. So I'll open up Hello World. We have a React component here, and you can see I have this H1 Hello World, which gets rendered right here. So we have Hello World, and then right below it you have this portal, and I'm importing it from this portal thing. So one thing you'll notice with React versus Vue is in React it's a little more like lower level. You have to build certain things manually, and in Vue you'll see that it's just there's already a standard sort of portal library that you can use. Whereas in React, portals are built in, but you have to do a little bit more work to make it behave in the way that you're seeing here. So I have this portal component. I put this content inside of it, and just by looking at this, you kind of expect like, oh, there's this H1, and then right below it, this div is going to render. And this Hello World component is placed right here. So this will be replaced. This Hello World here will be replaced by what this is returning here. So just by looking at the structure, you kind of expect like, oh, you have the H1, and then you have this div render, and that would be it. But you can see that it renders like this. You have the Hello World, and then, oh, there's nothing there. The div gets rendered up here in the portal. So you can see how you can take something that's in one component, put it in a portal, and then have it render somewhere outside the component. In this case, we're just rendering it right above the component.
Did you
And
see
then,
the
yeah.
Portal.js file as well?
What's that?
Portal.js file?
Yep, I'm going at that next. So this is a portal. So it's going to be a little more simpler in Vue, but in React, you sort of have to build your portal component to behave this way. So So you have React DOM gives you this function, and you kind of have to build your functionality around that. So here I'm using a component lifecycle method. So when this component mounts, I know the DOM nodes that I need to create the portal are going to be available. And I left this console log in here just for debugging, but we don't need that. And when the component mounts, I set this element to the ID. I grab the element with the ID that you pass in as a prop. So a portal needs a destination, and I just create this, pass it down this prop called to, with the value of destination. And you can see that I'm just using that as the ID for the portal target. So here, this thing has an ID of destination. And so I pass this prop down as a string here called to, and then you access it as this.props.to, and now lets me grab that, what I want to use as a portal target. And then this is where the magic happens. To use a portal in React, you call this React DOM.createPortal method. You pass it the things you want the portal to render, and then you pass it the portal target. And in this case, it's that DOM node with an ID of destination. And this .props.children is a sort of special prop. Every component will always have whatever you pass in between the brackets as a children, and you can access those children programmatically using this .props.children. So this is basically just saying whatever is passed in between the brackets here, just send it to the portal target here. And then you get this. So any questions about that React implementation? I'm going to go to the view one next.
In your Portal.js file, don't you need component will mount state for when you close the model or ops to go back into the state? Does you have component it mount?
So if this is a modal and you want to close it, yeah, there's a few different ways. You'd have to clear the state somehow, so you can. If I pass in the button to like close, let's say this is a modal and I want to close it, I can do a few different things. I can either add some sort of functionality that will set this .state.element to null, in which case this portal will just return nothing, and then it'll disappear. Or I could do some sort of conditioning here. So if I want this to conditionally render like nothing, I can just do like, I can just set like a flag there, or like when you click the close button or something like that. Basically, you can control it in here by either passing nothing as a child, and then the portal won't render anything, or you can have the portal just not render anything. And those are two ways to sort of close the portal.
So React
Yep.
DOM has create portal method.
Yeah, so that's something you have to import from React DOM, and you just call it like that as a static method.
So actually, what would be the advantages? I mean, like, it's too much concept here for me. I mean, to use the portal, in what situation you see the advantages?
Yeah, so this is a pretty basic example. I mean, there's not super obvious why this would be useful. But if we, let me see if I can modify this. So, hello world. So like if hello world had a workflow like hidden, and you want to render something above it, then I don't know if I can make this work into something useful, but I mean, this has a workflow hidden. You can see you can still render stuff above it. So it's kind of like, going back to my slides, I mean, the use cases would be for a modal. So if you want the modal to just be whatever you want to appear outside the component and be above something else, that's when it's useful. But this is just a very simple example.
Well, what if you did something like
yeah.
prompt the user for a user ID and then display his name or something like that? Do a lookup to find the name of the customer or whatever it is.
Okay, for like having that show as having that show in the pop-up, or
Show some way. I'm kind of a little bit confused here too as to what the point of all this is.
So it would be, yeah, it would be good to have like a solid example.
Do you want a current example for us?
Yeah, I have an example in the
If you bring
app
back,
as well,
if
but-
you bring back the slides, maybe we'll conceptualize easier.
like this is what you could use it for.
So that means you can create models and pop-ups and dialogues like kind of generic, yeah? You can customize them inside the portal, yeah?
Yeah. So it's really, I think the biggest use case for portals is modals, because the modal needs to be above everything else, and it's difficult to get a modal to be accessible and behave the way you want it if it's not at the very top of the DOM. And one of the best ways to have that set up is with a portal. So if you render a modal, like if you render a modal down here, you can give it a position of absolute, and you can set it so it looks like it's visually above everything else. But you might run into problems if, for example, your component here has overflow hidden, or you have something else that's positioned absolutely on the page that might cover up the modal, or you want to do something more complex with your modal, like you want to create a backdrop and you want to adjust the scrolling. It's a lot easier to just have that modal render at the very top than having to deal with sort of any edge cases that might occur when you render your modal over here inside this component, which could be nested really deep. Yeah.
What about the example of validating a form, like an input form? So you're filling in name, address, phone number, that kind of jazz, and they've put the phone number in wrong. They left out the area code or too many digits or something. Could you have your modal display the error messages and
Yeah, so
something like that?
yeah, that's actually a very good point. So with a portal, it's still part of the same component. So even though it's rendering up here at the top, it's still, in terms of from the point of view of the reactor view, the portal is still inside the component. So even though it's rendering anywhere else, you can interact with it in your component like it was any regular element. So you can set any properties, retrieve any properties you want from it, pass any prompts to it, listen to whatever events you want, and it'll behave from the application perspective as if it was a direct child, but it will actually in the DOM be above everything else. So it lets you, it's just a visual thing, mostly lets you put it to the top of the DOM or anywhere else you want, while still letting you interact with it like if it was a regular child component.
So am I still going to see my whole form, or the error message is going to tend to overlay the form?
You would still see your whole form, and you can interact with it inside your component like if it was rendered right there. It's just going to be at the top of the DOM, and that shouldn't break anything in your component.
You have it covered if you saw the slide. You have pop-ups. Yeah, so this modal pop-up. So that's a pop-up case, isn't it? Yeah, what he was saying about error codes popping up, yeah, that's a use case of of the portal.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Like any sort of thing to appear at the bottom, anywhere else. Above all the other stuff.
What about called by search engines? Sometimes it's useful to have something appear at the DOM that you want conditionally to render. So you want it to be hidden from a regular person, but you want it to be visible by a robot. So you can have this appear in a div that is off the screen, but when a person uses it, it's in the right spot or hidden, depending on what it is.
Yeah, that's a good one too. For positioning things way off screen and not having them inside your component. And yeah, and also if you need something rendered off this, if you have if you use certain DOM structure and you want things inside of your component not to render inside of your component, you can use a portal. And so it's useful for like lists if you want to add certain things to the list, have them appear above the list. And it'll make it easier for styling. Basically, you don't have to deal with the the DOM of your component getting cluttered by things that don't actually visually appear inside the component, you can use the portal to render it somewhere else.
Can you also use the portal for different components? Does each component have its own portal?
You can, so this will be, it's really easy to set that up in Vue. You'll need to do a little bit more in React to set that up. But yeah, it's possible. You can have multiple portal targets and one portal source. So whatever you put in the portal source could appear in a bunch of different places. It's not necessarily like a one-to-one setup where you have one like portal source and one portal target. You can have multiple sources and one target where everything in all the portal sources appear in that one target. Or you can have one source and a bunch of targets everywhere else, and then whatever's in that one source will appear in a single target.
Are you familiar with web components?
Yeah.
So how the web components approach this problem? Is the same or?
It'd probably be the same. You'd have to. Yeah, I'm not sure how it would work in React components because they have a shadow DOM and they're self-contained, so you'd have to, yeah, just write some functionality to explicitly remove it and then place it wherever you want.
Yeah, that's a general question. So it's
Yeah, so Vue is very similar to web components. And I can jump over to the Vue example quick right now. So this is something else. Here we go. So here we have the exact same example, but in Vue. And you can see Vue in Vue. Vue, there's a portal Vue component that you can pull in, so you don't have to set it up sort of manually like I did in React. Yes?
Is that like the visual Vue supported?
I'm not sure if it's official. It's not. I don't think it's part of the Vue core. It's something you have to pull in separately and use, but it's I think one of the only portal implementations in Vue. It's unofficially official. But yeah, if you're using portals in Vue, this is what you would probably use. And the setup is very similar to how it's set up in React. Once again, I have my portal target. This component I didn't make. It's provided to me by this Vue portal, or this portal Vue package. So I can just drop a portal target component right there. I give it a name of destination. And this class I just use for styling, it's not related to the functionality. So I give a name and destination, and you can remember from React I set up manually as a div and I just gave it an ID that I explicitly reference using a query selector. But here I just give it a name, and then in our hello world reference, I set up my portal like this. I tell it where I want it to render, I pass it this to prop, and I give it the name that I put here, which is destination, and this will render up here, and it's basically exactly like how it's set up in React, except for Vue, you have the sort of the components already built for you in this library that you can just pull in. And if I run this now, it's going to look exactly the same, but that's in Vue.
looking at this code, I just noticed, maybe I should have asked before, but the React version, can you pass only one property? Because I see you have two, portal 2 destination. Can you put more than one property when you invoke a portal?
Yeah, so properties, so in the Vue app I set up sort of manually. So here I only set up to accept one property, which is just the the ID of where you want to render. And so this is just a very basic example in React. You can add whatever you want to. In the view one though, yeah, portals just accept, for every single portal you have basically your one property called to, which is where you want the portal content to render. And then you have your portal targets, which just have a name. The only other properties you can really add are like, I guess the global HTML properties, and then you can set a property called multiple, I think, something like that, that'll let you basically define multiple, that'll let you have this portal target render content for multiple portals. So I think it's something like multiple or something like that. But yeah, the basic two basic properties are to where you want to render, and then the name, so you can select the render target for the portal. Yeah.
From the debugging perspective, if you inspect the DOM of the page, is it going to be obvious that the portal was used?
No, it'll look like it just appeared at the top.
So what's the debugging procedure here? I'm looking at this, I don't know what's going on. What's my first step?
So yeah, if you look at the DOM, it's not, I guess, super easy to debug. You won't be able to see that as a portal. So if you have, well, the way you'd be able to tell is that it's maybe as a class or something that gives a hint as to what it is, but it looks like this was just placed above everything else. And it makes it harder to debug if you look at the DOM, but that's also one of the pros of using portals is it just puts it above everything else, so it looks like it was just placed there. If you use something like, if you look at the component tree though, you'll see that the portal target is there, and you have your portal here. And it'll be easy to see that the portal is being used. But from the perspective of the DOM, it's just regular DOM nodes, nothing sort of portal special that will let you instantly identify it as a portal.
So with the portals we have, it would be quite easy to state your app create, right? And if you want to add like a non-single page app, you use it within, you want it to the mobile is outside of that guide. Can you not do that with portal view then? Because
that's a good point. I'm not sure, since it uses the view components, and you'd have to.
like it's not just targeting a DOM element, it's still targeting the view component.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So yeah, in React you can set, the way I set up in React is you can set the portal target to anything. It could be outside of, this root. Actually, no, yeah. So right now your entire React app is here, and it's pretty easy to set up like a target here for the portal outside of your React root. But I'm not sure how easy that would be in Vue, since it's using Vue components. So if you render a Vue app somewhere, you'd have to have the Vue target. Yeah, you'd have to have this. If you place this outside of the Vue root element, Vue's not going to know about it, and it's not going to render anything, so it wouldn't work outside the Vue root. I'm not sure how you can set it up so it would work outside the root Vue component, but that's a good point. That's definitely something to consider if you want to render something outside of React or Vue somewhere else on the page.
That's just that the package kind of gives you a lot of that, but you could probably write it in a really similar way that you did in React in Vue by targeting an element that is right to the element.
Yeah, you could probably set it up, but then there's also a few things to consider. Like with React, the create portal, React on create portal, that'll handle things like having events bubble up. So there's a few edge cases you have to consider if you were to build it manually in Vue. And you can probably look at the Vue portals source code and see how they're doing it and sort of modify it to work outside of the view root element.
How you organize the code for a big application?
There's no like really well accepted standard, but generally you just expand upon this sort of structure. You have components, and I'll try to keep it as flat as I can, as long as it's not too many components. But once you start getting into bigger components, you might break it up into feature folders, or if you use something like I forget the name, but like you can organize it into pages. So each page might have a big list of components, but there's no enforced standard or way to organize your components, just whatever makes sense. I always try to keep it as flat as possible. Of course, if it's a huge list, like 30 components or something, I'd group it into another folder, and so there'd be a little more nesting, but it's a little more organized. But it's definitely not like an MVC approach where you break up the components. And the components are modular, so you always have most of the component or all the component data in one file, or at least in one folder together. Any other questions?
So in a view, if you have many portals, where do you put them? In the same file, in app.view?
If you have, it depends on what your requirements are and what you're trying to build. But in Vue, your portal source will be inside a component, and then the portal target is going to be inside a component too, but you can put that anywhere else. And like I mentioned earlier, you can have as many portal sources and portal targets as you want, but there's no like container where you put them. So you're not going to have, in Vue, you can see you don't have a portal component. That's a library you bring in. But your portals will live inside your other components. There won't be a separate like portals folder or portals component.
And doesn't make it hard to debug?
I haven't found it makes it harder to debug, but I haven't built any complex portals. Generally, the things I put inside portals are like simple, like usually like a text pop-up. But yeah, if you're building something like a user form that appears in the pop-up, that would be a little harder to debug. But the debugging process is going to be the same as debugging a component. You don't have to jump anywhere else. In the code, the portal is inside the component, so you debug it just like any other component. Even though it's rendering somewhere else, you're still within your same component, so you debug it like any other component. You don't have to like have two files open. You don't have to have like the portal target open. It's all contained in one component.
Comment on that too, that you can always, like if you're worried about looking at the DOM tree sometime in the future and being able to track where things are, you can always just kind of build your own tree mentions inside the children that you're passing in. Like if you want to tag it, if you wanted to annotate it with whatever the source component is actually coming from, you can do that and have it show up in the DOM tree under where the portal is coming through.
Yeah.
Right? So you could use it, but you could also just organize it if you want.
How's it going? Okay.
All right, that's my presentation. Hopefully, my voice was okay to listen to. I had a bit of a cough and stuff, but yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to grab me after.
Are these well documented?
Yeah, they're both pretty well documented in React. So in React, it's part of the library, so you can just type in portals and like see how to use them there. With Vue, if you go to the Vue docs and you type in portals, like you won't find it there. That's it's not part of the core. It's a separate library. So like if you Google it, you get to the page for the Vue portals library, and it's pretty well documented as well.
Well done, Rob.
Thanks for putting that together.
Guys, this is long. Okay, so these challenges are something new that we're going to try in these meetups, and this first one at least is going to be fairly casual. It's not going to be too competitive. Just going to be a way to test your React skills, kind of apply what you learned in this talk here. We did talk a bit about where these challenges can lead. Perhaps in the future we'll have a leaderboard, and you can kind of compete against each other. This will be probably on a website that we'll set up. just to make it a bit more interesting as well, we're thinking of introducing prizes, maybe a trophy that you can take home with you or bring to your office and maybe garner the respect of your colleagues. Just leave it on your desk there.
I'm not sure there's a lot of point. This Gary Barrett guy seems to have all the points so far.
Yeah, he's a bit of a...
Could have a little trouble catching up to him.
He's a bit of a cheater. He's not here tonight though, so he'll be safe. So these are just basic guidelines. I'm thinking we'll give you about 30 minutes to code. See what time it is right now, about 8:08, so maybe about 20 to 30 minutes. It doesn't matter how far you get with it, as long as you get something on your laptop. You can work in groups, like I said, and then at the end we'll see if we can maybe take turns presenting your code and talk about it if you'd like, or we can keep it more casual and just talk about it in your own circle. And then in the end, if we decided, we can a few of us, a few of the organizers, will get together and decide a winner. We may not do that tonight though, because tonight's more of a casual challenge and not as competitive as maybe future ones.
Are we supposed to have installed something before we came?
No, it's optional. So you can also bring your own laptop if you want. And with the React and Vue, you just need to download, I think, just the installer, like the CLI tools. It should be just one thing you download from like NPM.
What if you use like a Windows
Yep, so it'll work on Windows, Linux as well. So it doesn't matter what operating system you use. It should be able to run on whatever you have. No violence, obviously. Unless you're using jQuery, you might be a bit of violence. So I set up 2 challenges. We might change this just depending on how much time we have left. These might be a little bit too difficult for tonight, but I'll let you decide. You don't have to follow these if you want. Just create a simple portal like Rob explained in his examples, where you just render like an HTML element above another one, and that'll be fine as well, as long as you kind of get to play around with portals. But I'll introduce these anyways, and then you can let me know if this sounds okay. So the first challenge I put together is in a page, you create an absolute positioned element. One absolute position element that when you position over another element below it, it will kind of suck it up and render it in a portal that will be somewhere else in the DOM. So it's kind of like this draggable portal that you can drag around the web page, and whatever other elements it touches, it'll take that and then render it in your portal. So does that sound maybe too difficult or something you want to try?
Yes.
It sounds pretty interesting. The other one is this one might be a little more fun, a little bit less code to write. So create 2 portals that each render 1/2 of the source they are given. So the element you pass the portal will essentially be split into 2. So you pass your portal element, and then it will render it in different parts on the DOM. And of course, Raul will be here to help you out if you have questions. So will I. So will others, I'm sure, that have more experience will help you out. And that's about it for the challenge. Do you guys have any questions or?
So what my team used for Vue? Okay, so I guess I'll first show what we did. Right? So if you come here, we have a simple input box, and whatever you type in here is going to be split between portals. So if I type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can see that we're going to have 1, 2, 3 on one side, 4, 5, 6 on the other side, and that fits the yeah. Okay, so how did we achieve this, right? So if you use Vue CLI, you can simply just type Vue create, and that's actually works out. You can type Vue create, the name of the project is going to make 99% of what you're seeing right now. I just renamed the hello world component into Javascript, and the functionality of the component is like really simple. Like we have an input field that I vmodel with a data called message. So message is defined here in the data. And we have 2 computed properties, one called left part, the other one called right part. That is just a split of the string, right? So we just get a substring that comes from 0 all the way to half of the string, and the other substring that goes from half of the string all the way to the end. So where does those 2 computed properties go to? The left part goes to a portal called left side, the right part goes to a portal called right side. And the portals are defined within the app components that wraps around everything. So we have the portal for the right side, some pipes, and the portal for the right side. And for the style, like to keep the portals one beside the other, we just have a little display flags in here too. And the portal.
But this first one, this is actually a portal above the HR, so that everything below the HR on the screen is actually the React root, where the React app is. And above that's the portal, so that's just the random div I threw up there. So something from my React app is throwing that up into the portal. I did get draggable working, so I've got a div that can drag, and I've got a thing of junk over here, and I'll show you where I would have connected all that up to throw the junk into the portal. I've got a portal component that's very similar to the portal component that's presented. And I'm saying to portal target, which is up here, just a random div above my roots. And inside there, I've got that H1 that you can see. Hoover is the thing that you drag around, so I'll show you that. I'm using a draggable library because getting draggable working reliably across the browser is a lot more code than I could do in 30 minutes and get it to actually work. So basically this just lets you drag and drop as updating the X and Y state as is being dragged. And then in the handle drag, that's where I would have done the collision detection. So I was using something in React called a rep, which lets you have a handle on an actual element that's in the DOM. Usually you're just dealing with components and things. So with that rep, what I can do is to any sort of component, I can say, hey, the node that the element that's in the DOM is actually supposed to be assigned to this rep, and then I can do stuff like DOM manipulation on it, or checking its X and Y, and then comparing it to where I'm dragging. So the idea would be compare the ref's position to where I'm dragging, and if they ever collide, then I'd actually fire a function that just says, hey, this child that I have, just throw that forward. Any questions? Thank you.
Yeah, basically I have this portal that you're dragging, and as you drag it, it moves over in this portal over here, and you get all the offset proper, so I haven't the original item disappearing, but as you can see it's kind of moving in the other portal. So what I did in the code here was basically just had this, created a source avenue, so and then I just passed that into where the source is there, the source content. And then I just have the mouse move to move to what I call the portal. And then I have the portal to a target that I pass in.